Chapter 17. The boy's neck bent in an odd way and his body fell limp. Freshman year in college. Man, this is like living in another country, Ramik said to George and Samson as they crossed the green lawns of Seton Hall University early in their freshman year. Yeah, I feel you, George replied. Hundreds and hundreds of students, most of them white, seem to surround them constantly. I feel like a rock in a snowstorm, completely covered up. Some of the students are pretty cool, Samson commented. They smile, they're friendly, they even invite us to study groups. It's just that there's so many of them. And little old white ladies hugging their purses when I sat next to them on the bus or subway, George added. Or white police officers stopping me when I haven't done anything, Samson reflected. It's just hard to get used to feeling normal around here. It's going to take time, George commented. I suppose they have to get used to us too, he said with a chuckle. The three of them shrugged and headed off to their various classes, which they loved. The preparation of the summer program had really helped, and they felt secure in their ability to do the academic work. The social aspect of living in the college atmosphere was a little more difficult, however. One afternoon, Ramik and a couple of his cousins who were visiting him got into a loud and silly argument in the dorm hallway. Students came out of their rooms, curious to see what the commotion was all about. Ramik, embarrassed by all the attention from a crowd of nosy students, reacted with anger instead of restraint. What y'all looking at? We just having a little disagreement, going back to where you came from. One of the students disappeared back into their dorm rooms, not wanting to antagonize Ramik any further. But two students remained. Didn't you hear what I said? Ramik yelled in his loudest, most intimidating voice. Get out of this hallway now. I live here too, one of the students replied, an arrogant smirk on his face. You can't make me leave if I don't want to. Ramik couldn't believe his ears. How dare this college boy challenge him in front of his cousins? What did you say? Ramik asked the student in disbelief. Where Ramik came from, a challenge had to be answered. The result was never very pretty. The young man, who looked completely unafraid of Ramik and his threats, repeated, I'm not going anywhere. I have just as much right to be in the hallway as you do. Even though he knew the student was right, Ramik felt his anger rise uncontrollably. He walked over the boy and said right in his face, counting to 3, If you don't leave, you're going to wish you had. The student laughed and said to his friend, He's trying to threaten me. Ha! Like I care. Ramik had reached the boiling point. 1, he said slowly and ominously. 2, he continued, a harsh threat in his voice. 3, he said finally. Ramik was pulsing with rage. The bold and seemingly unafraid student did not budge. He just stared at Ramik with a confident look of challenge on his face. Ramik, no longer able to control his anger, picked up the student, raised him over his head, then slammed him to the floor head first. The boy's neck bent in an odd way, and his body fell limp. Terrified, Ramik's anger dissipated. Oh my God, I've killed him, he thought. Growing up, Ramik had been taught to fight when he was disrespected, to stand up for himself, even if it meant reacting violently. But Ramik knew he had crossed the line in this situation. Then the boy moaned and moved on the floor. His friend helped him up and back to his room. The dorm hallway was completely empty now and eerily quiet. Back in his room, Ramik prayed silently, repentant but unable to change what had happened. He waited, and at 4 a.m. the police knocked on his door, took him to an office on the first floor of the dorm. In his mind, he watched his scholarship and his dreams disappear. All his work and struggle to overcome obstacles would be gone, like a wisp of wind through the trees. In addition to the police, members of the administration, the student, and his mother sat in the room, all looking at Ramik with accusation and disgust. Ramik's heart sank. Is this the guy who assaulted you? The officer asked the student. Yes, sir. the young man replied quietly. His arrogance had disappeared, along with Ramik's anger. Do you wish to press charges? The officer asked him and his mother. The mother paused and peered at Ramik. He looked at the floor, ashamed, embarrassed, and angry at himself for losing control. Then she spoke. No, officer, we don't wish to press charges. Ramik's head shot up in disbelief. You don't? He whispered. The mother said nothing else. Perhaps she knew he would get kicked out of school. Perhaps she saw potential in Ramik's eyes, but for reasons he would never know, she gave him a second chance. Too shocked even to find the words to thank her, Ramik was allowed to return to his room. He still had to face a hearing of school officials, however, and amazingly, they too chose mercy and only put him on probation. What was even more surprising was that white students he barely knew came to his aid. One offered the help of his father, who was a lawyer. Another offered to write a letter of support. Ramik was amazed and humbled, vowing never again to judge anyone just by race. Ramik did his best to stay out of trouble for the next few months. Yet he still felt restless and incomplete. You know, he told Samson and George one day, of all the dudes I used to hang out with in Plainfield, only 3 of us graduated from high school, and I'm the only one in college. Yeah, same with my friends. It's not like they were dumb. The possibilities of making it just seemed so far away, George replied with a nod. I had never even seen a college campus until I got here, Samson admitted. It was like going to Mars, something completely out of reach and not even worth thinking about. We ought to do something about that, Ramik answered with enthusiasm. There are little dudes on the streets right now, just like we were, sitting on some corner about to get into trouble. Why can't we find them and show them the other side of the world? George and Samson responded with excitement. The 3 of them trying to figure out a way they could reach out and help some kids and perhaps make a difference in their lives. Let's form a club. No, an organization that reaches out to kids in the community, Samson suggested. What should we call it? George asked. How about Ujima? Ramik answered immediately. Ujima in Swahili means collective work and responsibility to the community. It's one of the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. Perfect, the other 2 agreed. Over the next few weeks, in between going to classes, studying for tests, and doing extensive work in lab classes, Ramik, George, and Samson made the plans, found a faculty sponsor, and convinced the Student Government Association of the university to grant them permission to operate this new organization. Of course, they had no money to work with, so they brainstormed ways to raise money quickly and easily and still have fun in the process. Let's throw a party. Tight. We can call it Ujima Jam and invite kids from all neighboring colleges, Ramik added. The party was a rousing success. The music was loud, the DJ was cool, and the $5 admission fee from each partygoer added to the treasury of the newly founded help organization. It was the first of several such dances, which became favorite events on campus. After they had enough money to work with, Ramik, George, and Samson approached several elementary schools in Newark to try to arrange student field trips to the campus. It proved to be a bit more difficult than they had anticipated because of liability and transportation issues, but they did end up working with a couple of schools from Brooklyn. The kids came to the campus wide-eyed and amazed. Ujima bought them lunch, took them on a tour of the campus, and answered their questions. Is college hard? One little boy asked. It's no harder than high school, Ramik told him. But there's a lot more work to do. If you study and do your homework, it's really pretty easy. Doesn't it cost a lot of money to go here? A little girl wanted to know. Yes, it does, George told her, but anybody who really wants to go to college can go. There are scholarships and loans and work programs available. You have to be willing to work hard and find the solutions to make it happen. You sleep here at night? Another child asked timidly. Yes, we live in a dormitory and only go home on the weekend, but lots of students live at home and come here every day. On the bus or by car. You do what works best for you, Samson explained. But it's fun living here because there are fewer distractions. It's easier for me, at least, to study here than at home. One little boy, who had remained silent and looked bored, finally raised his hand. You have a question? Ramik asked him. No, I just think all this is stupid. I don't need no college. I'm gonna get rich selling drugs. He looked at Ramik, George, and Samson defiantly. The boy's friend, taking courage from his buddy, spoke up next. And I don't need to go to college either. I'm going to play for the NBA and make millions of dollars. The rest of the students seemed to consider these two with admiration. Ramik looked at them and smiled. Well, me and my two friends here are going to be doctors. And when some drug dealer shoots you, he said to the first boy, or when you trip on the basketball court and break your leg, he said to the second boy, and that's assuming the NBA decides to take your little short behind. We'll be standing there in the hospital waiting to take care of you. We will be the ones getting paid, and you'll be forgotten leftovers. The two boys scowled but said nothing. The other kids nodded with approval. You can have a future with meaning and respect and possibility, George added. That's what college can do for you. Don't be afraid to dream beyond what you see on the streets every day. A conversation with Dr. Ramik Hunt, The End of Violence, the Start of Giving Back. I had to learn control. By no means did I want to forget where I came from or lose my culture. I just needed to modify my behavior. I had to learn to face a challenge without a violent reaction. Actually, that student was right, and I was very wrong. The situation had nothing to do with race. It was a learned reaction to the stimulus of a physical challenge. I was behaving the only way I knew how. I had never been exposed to anything else. I gradually learned to discipline myself so that I could deal with challenges with my mind instead of my fists. I will always be grateful to that student and his mother who chose understanding instead of retribution. They gave me the chance to continue my dream. Most of the kids I grew up with didn't dream big. People would tell me that college was hard and that it wasn't for people from our neighborhoods. It wasn't until I got to Seton Hall that I realized that what they were saying was not true. The funny thing about it was that people who were spreading that lie had never stepped foot on a college campus. That's why it was important for us to figure out a way to expose the kids from our neighborhoods to colleges. So we came up with Ujima. The name fit perfectly. It meant collective work and responsibility. That's what it really was all about. Helping your neighbor. I learned the term from a book about the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. That same book talked about the importance of catching our children while they are young, before they get a chance to go down the wrong road. Lots of people contributed to helping me. I felt